The Paraguayan president avoids a vote of no confidence by canceling a controversial energy deal. Deforestation in the Brazilian Amazon has skyrocketed since Jair Bolsonaro took office. And Rwanda has reopened its border with the Democratic Republic of Congo. Hello and welcome to Telesur English. I am Estefania Bravo. This is From the South. The president of Paraguay announced on Thursday that a controversial energy deal with Brazil has been completely scrapped. This comes as President Mario Abdo Benitez was facing a possible vote of no confidence by Congress. The controversial deal sparked a crisis in Paraguay, which forced the president to sack the former foreign minister, who signed a secret agreement to give Brazil more control over the giant Itaipu hydroelectric plant. On Wednesday, a new foreign minister was sworn in. Our correspondent in Paraguay, Osvaldo Sayas, has the latest.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs reported today that the governments of Paraguay and Brazil are rescinding the agreement signed on 24th about the Itaipu binational hydroelectric power contract. This agreement unleashed the worst political crisis the government of Mario Abdo Benitez has suffered so far, and just a few days before he reached his first year in office. A debate had been started about the possibility of putting Abdo on a political trial in order to dismiss him from office, since, according to citizens' organizations and opposition parties, the government would have seriously harmed the interests of Paraguay. This event comes just a few years before the country has to start new negotiations on the use of the energy it shares with Brazil, since the treaty for the use of the binational Itaipu Dam will have to be renegotiated. Social organizations also say that there is growing distrust towards the government since the agreement had to be broken after the complaints arrived. In the end, Abdo avoided being put on trial. However, social organizations have said they will remain on alert to what they say was the surrender of Paraguayan sovereignty over Itaipu.
We thank Osvaldo for that report. Another round of talks is underway in Barbados between the Venezuelan government and sectors of the opposition. This is the third time the parties have met in Bridgetown. One of the members of the Venezuelan government delegation, Hector Rodriguez, said the dialogue backed by Norway has shown satisfactory advances. He said the aim was to overcome political difficulties and called on the opposition to reach agreements. The talks are following an agreed agenda, but at the request of Norway, both sides have agreed not to release details. The Strategic Command of the Bolivarian Armed Forces says another spy plane from the United States has violated Venezuelan airspace. In a tweet, it condemned what it called an imperialist provocation and called on the United States to respect Venezuela. The High Command said the U.S. plane failed to respond to warnings and flew for an hour and 20 minutes inside Venezuelan sovereign airspace on Wednesday morning. Moving on, a strike against the Tía María mining project in southern Peru is into its 18th day. There has been repeated repression against the protesters, and now the Peruvian Congress has passed a law that gives greater impunity to the police when they fire at demonstrators.
Communities in the Tambo Valley of Arequipa have been flooded with security forces. Repeatedly, they have used violence against the daily demonstrations against the Tía María mining project. Dozens have been injured, including children.
There were clashes here and the tear gas came into my house. My boy is there. How can they behave like this?
On top of this police abuse, condemned by the communities, the Peruvian Congress has now passed a law that means policemen who use their weapons against protesters and kill or wound someone can no longer be arrested. Progressive lawmakers say this is a threat to human rights.
Now, in a protest like that against Tía María or a trade union demonstration, the police can use lethal force. There have to be guarantees. The police have the right to intervene, but they must absolutely respect human rights.
The law was passed just as protests in the south and in the Peruvian Amazon are becoming more radical. The Ombudsman, the Ministry of Justice, and various human rights organizations have all called on Congress to reconsider the measure.
We have always sought to ensure that social conflicts are handled in a measured way. Now, the police may feel that they have nothing to answer for. If they fire their weapons, we already have 156 people killed in such conflicts, and a huge number of people wounded by bullets, grape shot, and so on. So this is a big risk.
It's been dubbed the trigger-happy law. Human rights defenders say that this, along with the legal persecution of the community leaders and the use of emergency decrees, has made Peru one of the worst countries in Latin America for the criminalization of protests.
A final vote on Ecuador's new health code has been suspended due to lack of a consensus between members of Congress. Among the topics that were debated were the medical use of marijuana and the decriminalization of abortion in the case of rape and incest. But a number of Congress members said there are sensitive details that need to be further studied before voting. Meanwhile, outside of the National Assembly, activists in favor and against abortion marched for their voices to be heard.
For us, it is very important because women have the right to decide whether they want to become mothers or not. The guards of the National Assembly are not letting us in because, according to what they were told, the President of the National Assembly said we could not go in. Therefore, we are here on the streets fighting so that this abortion is decriminalized in cases of rape. We want this for all girls who are forced to carry out unwanted pregnancy in Ecuador.
Pedro Pierluisi has been sworn in as Puerto Rico's new Secretary of State, putting him in line to become governor when Ricardo Rosselló steps down on Friday. Pierluisi, who once stood against Rosselló for the governorship, still has to be approved by the House of Representatives and the Senate. A special session is expected in the coming hours, and divisions within the ruling party mean he may not be ratified. Pierluisi was Puerto Rico's representative in Washington between 2007 and 2019, during which time his family's wealth grew enormously. Some are also worried about a conflict of interest, as Pierluisi is also a lawyer for the island's U.S.-appointed oversight board.
If anything is clear, is that the high leadership of the party that promotes stability in Puerto Rico is a criminal organization in which there are only puppets and puppeteers, people who allow themselves to be managed and controlled, but there is no will to serve, there is no good faith, and that is what is represented by the naming of Mr. Pierluisi.
I think that Pierluisi and anyone who occupies the position of governor in Puerto Rico ought to have the capacity to confront the Financial Oversight Board, and it seems there's a serious conflict there, because Pierluisi is one of the people who have had favorable treatment by the board, and that demonstrates that among the leadership of the PNP, there's no one who doesn't have skeletons in their closet. So it seems they are all disqualified from occupying that position.
Really, the ones they want are from their own group and no one else to be able to continue manipulating the people. But at this time, we really aren't going to just leave it to them. We are going to continue with this fight. And well, they have to put forward a person who will truly work for our rights. We are the people, and it's really us who choose them, not for them to work for themselves, which is what they've done until now.
A sharp rise in deforestation in Brazil, on top of indifference from the government of far-right President Jair Bolsonaro in dealing with illegal logging, mining, and agro-business activities, has alarmed many experts. They say that during Bolsonaro's expected 4 years in power, Brazil will lose a significant amount of natural resources, something that will affect the entire global community.
Over the past 7 months, the Brazilian Amazon has lost over 3,000 square kilometers of forest area. The figure reveals a 39% increase in deforestation compared to the same period in 2018. This comes as the government of Jair Bolsonaro has cut resources on the fight against illegal logging, mining, and cattle exploitation.
I think that in all of Brazil, the challenges are rampant mining, the destruction of the environment, the pollution of rivers. These issues call for urgent community, social, and political action. In Pernambuco, we do not have an immediate mining problem, like in the Amazon, but the problem of water pollution is very serious.
Although protecting the Amazon was at the center of Brazil's environmental policy in recent decades, With the current government, deforestation rates rose to 80% in June alone. According to analysts, the country is cutting back its effort to reduce global warming.
Environmental legislation in Brazil is already weak and very flexible, but now future projections under Bolsonaro's government show that we can expect even more environmental crimes that will threaten many lives in the future. Because environmental crimes affect fishermen, families, even animals. Most of the food we consume will be affected by the contamination of water sources.
Nonetheless, since his 2018 presidential campaign, Jair Bolsonaro announced that Brazil's protected lands were an obstacle to economic growth, and his goal would be to allow their exploitation.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Barbados has approved the bestowing of its highest national honor, the Order of the Freedom of Barbados, as an alternative to knighthood. Prime Minister Mia Mottley tabled the Order of Freedom of Barbados bill in Parliament, where she noted that the recipient can choose between either honors. She said non-Barbadians can also receive the decoration as well. Former FIFA Vice President Jack Warner has filed a $2.4 million lawsuit against the Trinidad and Tobago Football Federation. He is suing for monies lent to the organization over a 15-year period, which was not repaid. Last month, the Trinidad and Tobago national, who is facing extradition to the U.S., was ordered to pay $20 million by a U.S. district court for embezzling funds from the North American Soccer Confederation, CONCACAF, to which he served as president. Scores of Trinidad and Tobago nationals took to the capital Port of Spain from as early as 4:30 a.m. to celebrate Emancipation Day. The celebrations kicked off with a play reenacting the proclamation of the 1834 Declaration of Emancipation. However, the proclamation meant that slaves would get their freedom in 4 to 6 years after serving a period of apprenticeship. Slaves weren't actually free until 1838. In To Pearl Springer, the play's author recounted how Afro-Trinidadians maintained their spirituality in spite of being stripped of their African culture.
Tell them we're going on pray to St. Michael, but we plant our boom, and we tell them we go and pray to Mother Anne, and we plant Yemunja, and we tell them we're going and pray to St. John, and we plant Shongo Kabiesi. So them feel they turn we Christian, but like we say, a Nancy play fool to catch wise. But now, in this time, we strip away the veneer of Christianity, and we have no need to call our gods by any other name. And we thank our ancestors for that.
Citizens in Guyana are also commemorating the abolishment of slavery with Emancipation Day celebrations. Decked in their traditional African wear, many joined the festivities, embracing their African culture across the island. And Jamaica is also celebrating Emancipation Day. Prime Minister Andrew Holmes, in his speech to the nation, reminded that Africans struggled for justice, adding that emancipation was not a gift, but a human right.
We're going to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. Others may free the body. None but ourselves can free the mind. Those are the words of Marcus Garvey, immortalized in song by Bob Marley. Emancipation was not a gift. The end of slavery had economic considerations, no doubt, but more so, it was hastened by the unity of the oppressed in rebellion and supported by people of conscience. Slavery could only persist because the oppressors were able to divide us. Once there was unity and consensus emerged, freedom was inevitable.
The United Nations has confirmed that Rwanda has reopened its border with the Democratic Republic of Congo. The border was closed for several hours on Thursday after the confirmation of a third case of Ebola at the border city of Goma, where 2 people have already died. Life is reportedly carrying on pretty much as normal in both Goma and Giyensi across the border in Rwanda. Soldiers and police had been deployed to the many unofficial border crossing points, which people often use, as well as to the 2 official points of entry.
The border is actually now open with Rwanda. I'm not currently in Goma to explain to you exactly what happened this morning, but there may have been more procedures put in place. But the bottom line is, as of this afternoon, the border crossing between Goma and Rwanda is open.
The Sudanese military says 7 people have been arrested in connection with the killing of 5 teenage students in the city of Al Obeid on Monday. State media quoted the military as saying the men who opened fire were part of the rapid support forces and were providing security for a bank.
All the members of the Guardian Force have been arrested. They are 7, and as per directives from the Rapid Deployment Forces. They have been dismissed from the force and have been turned over to the prosecution in North Kordofan to continue their investigation and trial. Lastly, there will be an investigation looking into the security failure which led to the lack of control over these people during and after these events.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. At least 13 police officers have been killed in Yemen after a car bomb was blown up near a police station at the port city of Aden. The attack came a few hours after a drone attack was launched on a military parade in Aden that has left more than 30 people dead. No one has claimed responsibility for the attack so far. People in Warsaw, Poland observed a minute of silence to mark the 75th anniversary of the Warsaw Uprising during World War II. Locals lit red flares and raised polished flags to commemorate the insurrection and remember the victims. The Warsaw Uprising was a failed resistance operation that led to the deaths of nearly 200,000 people. The insurrection saw the Polish capital almost entirely and systematically destroyed during 63 days of fierce fighting against the Nazis. A new survey conducted by the Quinnipiac University in the United States has revealed that 51% of U.S. citizens consider President Donald Trump a racist, as evidenced by his U.S. policies.
51% of U.S. citizens that were surveyed believe Trump is a racist. 55% of Hispanics living in the U.S. share the same sentiment, while 46% of Caucasian citizens also have the same view. In the case of African American voters, 80% say yes when asked if they consider the president to be racist. These figures are according to the latest survey conducted by the University of Quinnipiac. But the president does not agree.
I am the least racist person there is anywhere in the world.
The study also covers immigration and the policies under the Donald Trump administration. 70% believe that immigration is good for the United States. 51% disagree. 35% believe that conditions in detention centers are inhumane, while 68% oppose this view. Meanwhile, 23% believe that those conditions are a serious problem, and 62% don't. And 29% believe that the federal government is not doing enough to ensure that the facilities are operated in humane conditions, as they are already called concentration camps. But disapproval of Trump's policy doesn't stay in the polls. While the president gave a speech condemning U.S. slavery on the anniversary of the first Legislative Assembly in Virginia, a young man interrupted him.
Right here in Virginia, your predecessors...
You can't send us back. Virginia is our home. Mr. President, you cannot send us back. Virginia is our home.
The young man held up a sign which read, "Return to your corrupt home, deport hate, reunite my family," and all shattered by systematic discrimination. However, Trump continued his speech with references to the contribution of African Americans to U.S. history.
These are people that, in my opinion, hate our country.
Statements that come weeks after he lashed out at 4 congresswomen of color saying that they should return to the countries they came from.
If they want to leave, they can leave.
Organizations like the Southern Poverty Law Center say the rise of hate groups in the United States coincides with the 2016 Trump presidential campaign and later with his presidential term. Santino William, the man responsible for the massive shooting in California on July 28, was spreading supremacist messages, as was Robert Bowers, who was behind the shooting at a synagogue in Pittsburgh that killed 11 people in October 2018.
People in the U.S. state of Hawaii are protesting against the proposed construction of a 30-meter telescope on the state's tallest mountains. The protesters are blocking the road to prevent construction equipment and crews from reaching the summit of Mauna Kea. Native Hawaiians consider the mountain to be a sacred place. They believe the new telescope will cause more harm to the site, which already has several observatories. For 20 years now, Colombia has been hosting the theater festival Women on Stage for Peace, despite the lack of government funding. Let's take a look.
Until the 11th of August, the 28th edition of the Women on Stage for Peace Theater Festival is being held in Bogotá, with more than 90 performances on 25 stages by 55 Colombian and 15 international theater groups.
This year, we have a very clear focus on the women who are social leaders and the importance of their role in building our society. The festival has always recognized the work of female directors and actresses for the last 28 years, but we believe it's fundamental to defend peace in this country throughout art.
During the festival, the audience will be able to enjoy the play The Love of Manuela and Simone, or Dreams of an Unfounded Country, moving from the streets to the stage, to tell the story of the difficulties and the achievements of the Ecuadorian hero, Manuela Sáenz, from different perspectives.
It goes from the moment she is born until she dies, the day she meets Simón Bolívar, the liberator of the continent, how they lived together. They traveled through the American continent, the battles they fought, how she was named colonel, the death of Bolívar, and her forced exile from Bogotá by Santander.
La muerte de Simón Bolívar, el destierro.
Fue a mediados de noviembre del año 2005.
Director Carlos Satizabal will also present another story focused on women and the recent victims of state crimes called Antigone, a women's tribunal.
La épica de las víctimas.
We are also interested in the story of the victims. That is what the play represents. The resistance of women to the so-called false positives, which is really the extermination of social movements and political movements that have sought peace, like the case of the Unión Patriótica.
Wings of a Butterfly is another play, which comes from Mexico. Through the metaphor of the journey of a monarch butterfly, it seeks to encourage awareness among children and adults about the struggles of migrants worldwide.
I think the play can be understood in two ways. The children who come and see it as a story of a butterfly, but later they start thinking and say, I have a friend at school that comes from far away, and he feels the same things as the butterfly, so I will be more empathetic with him. But always, it's a story of a butterfly, but if you're an adult, you understand the story behind it, which is the story of a migrant, and all the obstacle it has to overcome to reach the other side of the river.
The festival's schedule will be published on the Colombian Theatre Corporation website, and its presentations are easily accessible to all audiences. The entrance fee for each play is $4, and for 6 plays, it's $12.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telestudenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.